Okay, thank you for joining me in that. Okay, so let's begin. I just hit record, so I'm going to share my screen. All right. All right, so just for background noise purposes, I'm going to mute. If you have a question, then please raise your hand, whether physically or, with the little emoticons that all of us on Zoom have now. We're basically Zoom de facto experts at this point, aren't we? Okay, thumbs up if you can see this screen. Awesome, great. Okay, so voting in Utah and voter registration, it's a big topic. It's a topic that comes around every year, but especially in such a critical year as this one. This year, 2020, is actually becoming what is called the election of our lifetime. So no big deal, no pressure. So what is VOTERISE? So VOTERISE is the only nonpartisan nonprofit with a sole mission to increase voter registration and turnout. So we only have one mission. We dedicate all of our resources, time, staff members to increasing voter registration and engagement in the state. So we're a 501c3, which means we don't endorse or support any candidates or party, but all of those resources that I'll go into are available to anybody. And we're based in Salt Lake City, but we have engagement all over northern Utah and some in southern Utah as well as a little bit of central Utah movement. We're hoping to gain more movement, but we're a fairly new nonprofit. We started registering voters in 2017. And our target is to increase those demographics that historically and modernly have been left out of our voting process. So that includes 18 to 29-year-olds, as well as underrepresented groups, including women, Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQIA+, impoverished communities, and other individuals who may have low voter registration engagement within their communities. So here's a little bit about VOTERISE as well, some of the things that we've done. Since 2017, we've registered over 25,000 voters. And the majority of those, about 99%, have come from the state of Utah. In 2018, we registered 30% of the state's registrations. And we have a Get Out the Vote campaign where we send one text or one email out to all of our registrants with a nonpartisan voter guide. And it has an interactive ballot component. So you can see two candidates side by side, and you can see where they stand on, let's see, if you want to select healthcare or climate change, those kinds of things. You can actually compare those people side by side and print off your interactive ballot or email it to yourself. And because of this nonpartisan voter guide, that also includes polling locations and when you need to postmark your ballot, we actually have a 75% turnout rate with VOTERISE. And that's what makes VOTERISE really successful, because it doesn't really do much good if you register people and they don't turn out to vote. So we really want to make sure that people actually turn out to vote and feel like their voice is being heard. So that's why a lot of people choose to link VOTERISE instead of just the plain utah.gov site, the vote.utah, because of that turnout rate. To kind of put it into perspective, in 2018, which was a large turnout year because of the midterm elections, the state of Utah had about a 54% turnout rate. So this is 21% more. So we have something called the 2020 Challenge, and we'll talk more about that as well too. These are our ambassadors, or also known as volunteers, and we actually send them out voter registration kits. So this is something that I'll encourage you to do later on. Inside of that kit, you get your very own tip sheet of how to register voters. It's great because you're getting the interactive training right now with me. And on top of that, you'll get a bright green shirt that says, "Are you registered to vote?" You can't miss it. A little bit of a fashion disaster, but great for PR. As well as a clipboard, a bunch of voter registration forms. You'll also get some pens. You'll get some stickers that say, "I'm registered to vote." People love stickers, we've noticed, and everything else that you might need to register voters. So that kit comes when you sign up to become an ambassador, and we'll go through that as well too. In 2019, we attended about 200 events. We projected to attend about 500 this year. However, we've stopped doing events since mid-March. So just like everybody else, we've been trying to adapt to COVID-19 and everything that that entails. So we switched mostly entirely to digital registration. VOTERISE actually has a text platform as well as a website platform, and that's available in 13 different languages in the entire US. We'll go through that as well too. Utah Women's Voter Registration Day. So that falls on February 14th, and VOTERISE created this holiday when HCR 16 was passed in the legislative session last year. And this year was the first ever new holiday. It's the very first in the nation. We do have a National Voter Registration Day in September, but we don't have any dedicated solely to women. So we created this, and the first ever one was held in February, and the days leading up to it, 5 days before, we held drives at 10 high schools and 5 colleges, and we registered 763 people, which entirely, mostly, minus like 5 were students. So that's a big thing, is really, really making sure that these students have already from the get-go feel like they have a voice. And the 2020 challenge, which those are the people who are ambassadors who get the kit, these are all the organizations that are in with us. What's not pictured is the ACLU of Utah and Mama Dragons. We're still getting their logos. So I just wanted to give a brief history of voting rights in Utah and the US, because unfortunately we know that the US and Utah in particular, problematic in some areas, and we need to acknowledge what we've done wrong to make sure we can do it right in the future. So for most of history, voting rights only included a really exclusive demographic, white, mostly property-owning males. On February 12, 1870, the Utah Territorial Legislature unanimously votes in favor of women's suffrage. Interestingly enough, the only state that did this before us was, well, territory at this time, was Wyoming, and they did that the summer before. However, they weren't the first state to have a woman vote, because they didn't have, they passed it in December and their election was in the summer. So 2 days after we passed women's suffrage, we had an election. So we beat them to the punch, technically. And the first ever vote cast by a woman under equal suffrage laws was here in Salt Lake City, in Utah, by a 23-year-old school teacher that had no idea she just made history. And of course, that's why VOTERISE initiated HCR 16 to designate that holiday on February 14th, when that first vote was made ever by a woman in the US under equal suffrage laws. On August 18th, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified, but we have to let everybody know that this didn't include everybody. It began the expansion of voting rights in the US, and unfortunately this only included white women. On the right, you can see when our bill was signed in, when the concurrent resolution was signed into law. Our founders were there, some of our partners, and you've got Governor Herbert in the middle, and then below that, the logo that we created for Utah Women's Voter Registration Day. So moving on, in 1962, voting rights grew to include Native Americans. However, we need to acknowledge that Utah was the last state to do this. There were states before this that allowed Native Americans to vote. Utah was the very last one. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act resulted in the growth of African American voting rights, so expanded to African Americans. This year, 2020, is the 150th anniversary of the first woman voting in the US under equal suffrage laws. And then, of course, the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment and the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. Yet, we know, being politically active as we are, for worse or for better, voter suppression is still a really big thing, unfortunately. You've got ID voter laws, you've got polls closing early, people waiting in lines. They should be able to vote, but they're not being able to vote. So VOTERISE aims to increase voter registration and engagement, also decrease potential voter suppression by educating individuals on their rights as a voter, as well as being nonpartisan, so these voter laws can apply to anybody. And of course, you can help, and we'll get into that as well too. So here are some really sad facts. Unfortunately, when it comes to voting in Utah, we have a few of them. So in 1980, Utah ranked 5th in voter turnout. In 2016, Utah ranked 39th. In 2018, that did increase to 23rd. So we are making a little bit of progress, but we're not near where we used to be. In 2014, only 8.1% of Utah's 18 to 29-year-olds voted, which was less than half of the 19.9% national average. Only 8.1%, and Utah is such a young state. And of course, here we have several examples of when every single vote matters. 2016, current Representative Harrison, who represents Sandy, White City, she received 8,536 votes, and she lost by 5 votes. At first it was 3, and the recount it was 5. That's a very current example. She ran again and of course won, but we feel bad because every time we talk to her, we let her know she's an example. In 1980, another House race was won by just 1 single vote. So we like to emphasize that every vote matters, and that's something that you'll echo as well too while you're out in the field registering voters, whether that's digitally or safely on the ground. In 2016, there were 288,000 women in Utah who were eligible to vote but not registered. In 2018, that number climbed to 316,000. And of course, that's why we introduced the 2020 challenge, which are also known as our ambassadors. Those are the volunteers that will get the kits. Any questions at this point? If you have any questions, please unmute yourself. No? Okay, great. So a few voting laws. So felons can vote in the state of Utah. Did you know that? That's so cool, right? It's a state-by-state thing. Utah has always allowed felons to vote, and that means that even if they're on parole, waiting probation, even if they're out, on bail, awaiting bail, they can still vote as long as they're not currently incarcerated. So we've actually worked with the ACLU of Utah to register voters who are also felons at the jail. So then, they're about to get out, and then they'll have an updated address, and then we turn in those voter registrations, and they're good to go. We also work with release day fairs as well too. So it's the day of these individuals being released, and we're there to help them get registered to vote. Of course, pre-COVID, when we had events. Currently homeless Utahns are eligible to vote. So it's really great because they can actually use a cross streets of the location where they sleep as their address. So if they sleep on the corner of 2nd West and 3rd South, they can actually put that down on their voter registration. And we've worked with homeless shelters in the past and are hoping to continue working with homeless shelters on busing individuals as well too, who are currently homeless to polling stations. Of course, we'll see how the election looks in November, but if they are residing in a shelter, they can have a by-mail ballot sent to them. I think that the shelter in Ogden is the Lighthouse. Is that right? Okay, great. So yeah, so if they reside at the Lighthouse, the average amount of time that people reside at shelters is 62 days. So, if it's closer to the election, there's a good chance that they'll get their by-mail ballot sent to that location and they can mail it back. You can pre-register at 16 and 17. So that's why pre-COVID, again, we went into a lot of high schools. We could register people as young as 16, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, where we register them and they'll be all good to go when they turn 18. Or if they're 17 and they'll turn 18 on or before election day, they can actually still be 17 and vote in the primary. That's kind of cool. Okay, so here are a couple of our initiatives that we have going on at VOTERISE, and if you'd like to be a part of them as well too. Our main one is our volunteering with the 2020 challenge. That's where you'll get a voter registration kit, as well as be notified of any upcoming trainings as well. And our goal is to recruit 1,000 individuals to help decrease that gap of 316,000 women who are eligible but not registered to vote. But of course, that doesn't mean just register women. We need to register everybody. But that's how you get a voter registration kit mailed to you and everything you need to register voters. And we also introduced this new initiative called Do It for Grandma. And the best way to put it is, if you know a grandmother, or if you are a grandmother, or if you know somebody who's granddaughters, we're actually getting a feature in the Tribune. We're asking people who want to do this initiative to be interviewed by the Tribune and be featured. And the best way to describe it is it's a multi-generational initiative where the grandmothers are lovingly peer pressuring the younger generation to vote, using the memories of their own grandmothers or great-grandmothers that couldn't vote. Again, 100 years ago wasn't that long ago, and even 55 years ago with the expansion of the Voting Rights Act, it wasn't that long ago. And so we need to increase the younger generation's understanding of why it's important to vote and why they should vote, and really why they need to vote. So that's just another initiative that I wanted you to be aware of. And other ways to get involved as well too. This is a great example, talking to your extracurricular circles, as well as any organizations. We've gone to Adobe and Overstock and a few others as well too. And of course, knowing and sharing the facts. For example, the felons can vote. A lot of them have been told that they can. They absolutely can. And so now that you know, passing the baton over to you and sharing this information. So here are some things that are going on, events in COVID-19. So we really take our volunteers and their loved ones' health and safety very seriously. VOTERISE believes that a pandemic is a real thing, and if you do choose to go out and register people, we have a few things you have to do that are non-negotiable. For example, we require all volunteers to wear face masks or coverings. That's non-negotiable. And we also require that they sanitize pens in between use, and if possible to wear gloves, and of course to social distance. We know that can be a little bit more difficult if you're helping somebody with a voter registration form, but those are our recommendations and also a couple of requirements as well too. And for those who are high risk, which a lot of our volunteers are, once they sign up to become an ambassador or volunteer, we actually have digital volunteering, where we use social media posts to get the word out. And becoming an ambassador or volunteer, you do actually get your own personalized code to share with people. So then we can actually credit you with those registrations. So there's still options for everybody. We're not slowing down because of a pandemic. We still want to do things safely, and there are still options for people. And of course, dates to know. November 3rd, I think all of us have that in our calendar. And all the candidates and issues are on the ballot. During the primary, we had to communicate with our volunteers and to let those people that they're talking to and engaging with, let them know that not everybody will get a ballot. For example, if you're affiliated with the Democratic Party, there were only 2 Democratic primary races in Salt Lake County. However, if you were registered as Republican, then you would automatically, because of state candidates, get a ballot. But in November, that's when everybody gets a ballot. And that's when, if we call it the final countdown, where round 1 was the primaries, and now this is the final ballot. So that includes everything from president to county council to state house to gubernatorial, state board of education, to judges and other school boards, propositions, amendments. A really big amendment that will be on the November ballot is Representative Hollins in the state legislature. She proposed this amendment to become on the ballot to abolish slavery from the Utah Constitution. Who knew that was still in there? It should definitely not be in there. So that amendment will be on there. That's a really big one that can be a talking point when you register people as well too. But that will be on the November ballot. And deadline for all online and paper registrations is 11 days before Election Day. So for this year, for the November election, the deadline for all registrations, so that includes online, that includes paper registrations that you need to mail into VOTERISE or anything like that, all registrations. It's a hard deadline of October 23rd. And then there are just some events from some of the things that we've done, some pictures from events down there at the bottom. The bottom right, that's kind of cool. We met Gloria Steinem at a party in Park City. So, and then of course we did some voter registration training at the Clearfield Job Corps, where they have a very diverse group of individuals that are trying to get through school. And the youngest people that attend, I believe, are 16 through early 20s. So we really try to go everywhere and anywhere. So the ultimate question, how do I register voters? So if you go to this link, and I can post that in the chat as well too, oops, we're gonna go back. It's voterise.org/2020 challenge, and we just ask your mailing address and your size of t-shirt, so you can get a bright green t-shirt. And then you'll get that voter registration kit, and you can start registering voters wherever you are. So one thing that you'll find in the kit is a bunch of voter registration forms. So these are the new State of Utah voter registration forms. Hopefully that's not too blurry for you, but one thing that VOTERISE does is we actually highlight the necessary fields. A lot of people, especially first-time voters, they get really overwhelmed when they see a form like this. It's a government document, there's a lot of words, there's not even one picture on it. I mean, kind of, in the top left there's an emblem, but it can get overwhelming for a lot of people, and it's totally understandable. And so we highlight only the necessary fields that the Lieutenant Governor's office needs to process a successful voter registration. So the highlighted sections are necessary. Everything else is completely optional. The registrant can fill it out if they want to, but they don't need to. So what's necessary? Requirements. Oh, sorry. Angel just came into the room. Admit her real quick. So the requirements, you do need to be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 or 16 or 17 pre-registering, and a resident for at least 30 days prior to election day. So it's really, really basic requirements in the state of Utah. Your full legal name, full physical address. So it's not a P.O. box. It needs to be where you sleep at night. Your full birth date, and then your driver's license number or last four of Social Security. Hi, Angel. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Hope. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. Let me know if you have any questions. We're about halfway done, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have if I don't answer it.
Not at all. I've done a lot of this stuff before, so I feel pretty confident, but I just wanted to hear the conversation on outreach to marginalized communities.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Cool.
All right. So the last four of your Social Security number or driver's license. It's either or. We have a lot of individuals who might be 16 or 17. They've got to hop on their phone with their parent or guardian and ask for the last four of their social. That's totally fine. A lot of those individuals might not have a driver's license, or somebody just moved from out of state. Then they can use the last four of their social if they don't have a Utah driver's license. Place of birth, really simple. It can just be UT or ID for Idaho, that kind of thing. Phone number and email address. So you'll notice that these in section 7, these are technically optional. So why do we require them? We'll get into that. It has to do with our Get Out the Vote campaign and making sure that these registrants actually vote. And then they need to sign with today's date. And then that's it. Like I said, the rest is optional. These forms make it really easy. Ooh. Perfect. Okay, so how to approach someone to register. So this is kind of, you know, when push comes to shove, when you're actually talking to strangers. So the first thing, one of our first tips is to avoid making assumptions about people. Ask everyone. We do have a tendency to approach people like us, but you never know, so approach everyone. And the approach can be greeting, so hello, can I get you registered to vote at your current address? So younger people tend to move frequently, and you never know, someone just moved. They might not know that they need to update their address. If they're not registered, then you can give one reason to register. How quick and easy it is. It just takes a couple of minutes. You can talk about how, if you're at a protest, for example, how voting can make real change. For example, the elected Minneapolis City Council just voted with a veto-proof majority to dismantle the police department. And it's really easy to vote. Utah's a by-mail state, so you can vote right from your home in pajamas. That's my personal favorite. And registration gives you the choice to vote. So if you register and some people say, oh no, I don't vote, this gives you the choice whether or not you will eventually. So it kind of is, putting the carrot out there, because hopefully once we send them the GOTV, that one text reminder, they'll see how easy it is and they'll actually vote. So that registration gives them the choice to vote. And of course, if they're not interested at all, you'll get those people, politely move on. You really should expect rejection. It's part of the process. We tell all of our volunteers, if possible, don't take it personally. Just move on to the next one. There will be another person who needs your help. So here are some frequently asked questions. What are the reasons someone might need to re-register to vote? So there's only a few. To update your address, they may have recently moved. To update your name, they may have been married or divorced since their last registration, or to change party affiliation. This is a big one when it comes time around primaries. People will need to update their registration to vote in one primary or another to get a ballot. And of course, if they haven't voted in the past 2 election cycles, VOTERISE does have a link on our website to check voter registration status to make sure that they're active. And can you fill out the form for someone? The answer is yes. So we go to, well, pre-COVID again, we went to a few events last year where like Project Homeless Connect at the Salt Lake Convention Center, and when we're working with individuals within the disabled community, some people prefer that we help fill them out the form. And so you can actually complete the form for the registrant. We actually find that it's quicker to do so. You just look right down on that piece of paper. Okay, what's your full legal name? And write it real quick. The only thing that you can't do is sign and date it for them. So at the very bottom, just make sure that they sign and date. It's important that they don't just do a little squiggle, that they actually do their signature. So then if they do vote by ballot, that signature will match up as well, or sorry, by mail-in ballot. And of course, when they're voting in other capacities as well too, it's important that that signature is actually their signature. So how do we get young people to register and vote? Earlier, I went over that really sad statistic of only 8.1% of Utah's 18 to 29-year-olds actually voting. It's about doubled since 2014, but that means that it's only about 16%. And that does vary based on the pollster. We have in Utah people saying 16% to about 30%. So still a very, very low percentage for individuals that, it's a state that has so many young people, yet they're not voting. So we found that younger people care less about party affiliation and are more issue-based. So what does that mean? Every person has their issue. So make their vote about that one thing. For example, our volunteers at protests. We talked about the Minneapolis City Council. They dismantled the police department. So make it about that one thing. And we also had a study done as well too, where we found that the 2 biggest issues for those in the youngest voting bloc are climate change and gun control, which really makes sense if you think about it. Of course, climate change, a lot of young people are very concerned about that, and gun control. These are the people sitting in a lot of the time in classrooms who, they've done those active drills as well too, and it's a very real thing. So another FAQ, why am I asking registrants for their email and phone number if it's optional? So our highlighted forms make it easy and quick for voters. You can complete it in less than 3 minutes. And on top of this, then you all will turn in the forms to VOTERISE, where in your kit you actually have paid postage envelopes that you're able to mail forms into us. And we take these 2 pieces of information for our get out the vote. Again, I mentioned how registering to vote is all great and dandy, but what good does it do if they don't actually turn out to vote? So with this one text or email with the nonpartisan voter guide, our registrants have a 75% turnout rate. So that's why we ask our volunteers to take their email or phone number. It's best if both, but at least one. So then, of course, they have that extra touch point to encourage them to actually show up and vote. So what languages are available? So the only language that the state form is in is English. It used to be in Spanish, but however, the state did away with that a few years ago. But Salt Lake County actually has a Spanish form that can be used in every county. So VOTERISE has those, and we actually have them highlighted for people's use as well too. And you know, it's technically an archived form. Salt Lake County doesn't like people to use it since the state of Utah actually did away with their Spanish form. But we have talked to Salt Lake County, we have talked to the state, and my experience turning them into the Lieutenant Governor's office, they accept them all the same. They still allow people to fill them out and to turn them in. And as long as they have all that information on there that we went over before, successful registration. So we can still use these, and they're available to use for any volunteer. And the VOTERISE digital tool that we have on our website, and that candidates and parties can use as well too, or if you have your own personal website as well, our digital tool has 13 different languages available to register online. And when you become an ambassador, when you sign up at that link, voterise.org/2020challenge, with that personalized code that you get, you can actually send these individuals to the VOTERISE digital tool, and those individuals can sign up in 13 different languages to register to vote. So that's all that I have for you. I hope this was helpful. We went over a lot of stuff. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to answer. Please unmute yourself. I'm all ears.
I had a couple of questions for you. Thank you. That was a nice presentation. What is a voting cycle? Is that a year, annual, or 4 years, or?
Yes, so it's every single year. So for the general election, that's every single November, the Tuesday after the first Monday.
Okay,
And,
so if they miss 2 of those consecutively, they could be bumped from the
the voter rolls. So it's important that they check their status. Again, VOTERISE, we have a tool just at the top. Am I registered? They can go there, they can check it. And if they're not, if they see that it's inactive, then you can register from there as well too.
And who decided that process?
So the state updates their voter rolls.
Recently? Yeah. I wasn't aware that you could be.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, purging voter rolls is a big thing. Unfortunately, we went over some voter suppression. That is a good example of one. So it's important that just to make sure that you're registered, that you check it real quick. And all the information you need is your name, address, and your driver's license as well, or last 4 of social. So it's a quick process. It's just personal information real quick, and then it will show you your status.
Okay. And then the other question I had, are the ballots in different languages or just the registration form?
So the default ballot is in English. However, you can ask and request a Spanish ballot.
Okay, just those 2 languages.
Yeah, and you do have to take the extra step to request a Spanish ballot. That's a great question.
So you request it when you register? If you vote by mail?
So you can call the county clerk and let them know that that's your default ballot that you'd like. or the state of Utah, the Lieutenant Governor's office as well. Or if you're unaffiliated voter, then you might get a piece of mail or an email sent to you before like a primary election. Ask what ballot you'd like in Spanish or the default English. So that it is on there. It's not in very noticeable print, but that's something that you do need to request.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking those questions. Actually, today we just hired a 16-year-old from Park City High School, Latinx outreach coordinator. So she'll be going all over the state doing some Latinx outreach. So we're really excited for her to join. And of course, one of our big partners is Voter Latino, and they've helped us translate some materials into Spanish. We do have our shirts that are currently available in English or Spanish, but our other like text to vote cards that you'll get in your kit when you sign up, we've just created a Spanish version of that, and that has FAQs on the back, like how to vote, requirements to vote, those kinds of things. So it's very important, and it's not just important but necessary. Thank you.
Our branch has always had a voter registration and get out the vote committee. This is something we historically do every year, but we're excited to be able to connect with you all to expand our efforts. One of the questions I had in terms of volunteer additional training, can we use this recording to share with our membership, or will we need to reschedule? And do we sign on as an organization or as individuals to be a part of the work that you're doing?
Sure. So a few different ways. So first of all, yes, I've recorded this for you. You can distribute it, you can use it, post it on your website. That's just fine. I'll send that over to you when we're done. And of course, if you want any live trainings, if your membership has any questions that they'd like to reach out to me, I'm happy to do another training as well. You can just email me a time or date and we can figure something out. And as you saw before, we had a bunch of 2020 challenge partners. You're welcome to sign on as an organization. And that just means that we'll give you any resources you might need. But within those organizations, we also have those ambassadors that have signed up, so then they can get their own personalized digital code, as well as their own shirt and any other registration materials that they'd like to use on their own time when maybe they're not under the purview of the NAACP. So you can, of course, join as a 2020 Challenge partner, and I would encourage you to sign up individually as well too, so then you have more materials there. Thanks, Betty. Any other questions?
Great. Yeah.
It's great signing up as an organization as well, because we actually print you off your very own logo on the 2020 Challenge cards, the physical cards. So it's kind of just more publicity for your organization as well. And then of course you're on our website. Any other questions?
This is Angel. I don't have a question, but I had a couple of things that I'd like to share from when I was doing registration with VOTERISE.
Yeah, excuse me. For being here, Angel. You're a rock star.
One of the things that I found really, really helpful are the VOTERISE cards where you text to register. Those were so helpful, because a lot of times people are very, I've got things to do, I can't stop, and you give them the card and tell them that it takes less than 3 minutes and you can do it on your phone, and it sends you these great reminders. A lot of times when people have moved, that's one of those things that, here, just go online, just do this, and you can sort that all out. Also for Ogden, if there are anybody that is in transition, and doesn't have a physical address that they feel comfortable using or giving, Anna from Jesse Janes has always allowed anybody to have their ballots sent to her address. You just need to jot down their name and then, you know, shoot her an email going, hey, you know, Bob Smith is going to have a ballot that's coming to JJ's, and so she knows about that, and then so she's expecting it when it comes. But so nobody not having a current address is not an excuse. They have their rights. And Hope brought up a really good point about voter issues, and there's something that I think, as we are all going to be attending a lot of protests and things, I don't know if you saw this in the news, but Asheville, North Carolina City Council has voted for reparations. And that's a huge thing. Now, granted, it's going to take a long time for that to take effect, but they took that step. And we in Ogden have city council seats that are coming up. So I think it's a really good thing to bring up when you're talking to people, that we have a local election coming up, and something like the city council can do things with regards to climate, with regards to recycling, with regards to reparations, and it can't wait, which is something that the NAACP is very interested in moving forward. So, and the people at Weber County Elections, Ryan Cowley and Daniel Wade, are rock stars.
Yeah, they're great. We love them.
They are amazing. And when it comes down to the wire, if you bring something in at 4 o'clock, they are going to process your registration very, very quickly. Whereas some of the people in Salt Lake City have, you know, bring in their registrations and it'll take a week and a half for them to happen. So, I mean, we're in a really good place with Ryan and Daniel, and they're so nice. And if you ever have any questions, when you go into the Weber County election office, they actually look for it. It's an interesting Easter egg to find. They have a side room that says the crying room, and that's because they're under a lot of pressure. So but they're really great people, and they'll be super helpful and they will, if you give them your number and say, look, I gotta go, I'm really busy, but if you have any problems or questions, will you call me? They'll do that. If they have some problems reading handwriting or whatever, a lot of times they'll double check with you and before they call the voter, in case it's something that it wasn't quite right on the application. They're great.
Yeah,
so
the Weber County Elections Office is just phenomenal. They're there to just help everybody out. Daniel and I actually did a webinar with Action Utah talking about the security and safety of mail-in ballots. And of course, you can find that on our Facebook page, but that was a very hot topic right before the primary, and I imagine that will be even more so for November, but he's willing to help anybody and everybody. So, and plus, can we talk about their memes that they put on?
Right? They're fire.
Right, they really are. It's a great way to encourage younger people, especially to vote, I think. I love them. I look for them. I follow them, of course, both personally and as VOTERISE. Betty in the chat, oh my goodness. So you lost a school board race by 3 votes. That's crazy. Wow.
Wow.
I think that we have a few examples.
That we feel we better serve moving a massive amount of those resources into our communities.
Yeah, I had a couple of close calls. When I first ran for the state legislature, I came within 1 vote, 70%ing 16-year incumbent, and then lost in the general election. And then, so when I ran for school board, yeah, I was up by 3, down by 3. When it was all said and done, I lost by 3 votes. So
Wow.
I definitely use that story when I'm out registering folk and telling them about the importance of voting, that every vote does count. Because I know at least, 3 or 30 people that didn't vote, easily, that could have made the difference.
Well, thank you for running. It's such a hard thing to do. I know Angel can back me up on that as well too, and anybody else who's ran for anything, but thank you for running. And I hope that you run again as well too, if you feel like that's something that you'd like to do. I'm glad I have this example. Then I can talk to Representative Harrison and tell her that we'll give her a break when we talk about how much every single vote matters. So thank you. Thank you for that example, and thank you for running. Are there any other questions? Well, if not, here's my contact information. Oh, Betty, did you have something? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to thank you again. It was short, sweet, to the point, and I did learn some things today. So I'm always excited when I get better information and factual information to help our constituents participate in this process. Because like you said, there is an all-out assault on voting, unfortunately, still today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Of course, that's my personal phone number. If you'd like to chat, if anything comes up, I'm happy to chat with you. There's my email address as well too. Here are just some cute photos from pre-COVID events at the top as well. And I've popped that link to sign up and get your voter registration kit in the chat. So if you have any questions, please email or give me a call, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. But thank you so much for being here today. And like I said, I recorded this meeting, and so I'll send that over to you, Betty, and you can distribute that to your membership. Any other final questions? Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Have a good night.
Thanks, Hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.